everything.
Alright guys, we are back in Free Code Camp. Today we're going to be going over the Tic Tac advanced project. Now, I made kind of a janky one. I'm not the best with CSS, and I just kind of like the logic aspect of coding, but this should get you help to get you started. You'll see from our little quick example here, it's pretty basic. We have a turn X and a turn O button, so you can choose this. A little bit of logic, so it resets when we change our player turn. So whichever one is selected in this, you'll see that's going on. And then the computer will generate a randomized turn, at which point, if we or the computer wins, so like right now, this is done. So we probably should create a reset button. For me, I just go ahead and click this and it will redo it. Let's see. And then bam, and then we'll throw up, if the computer or I win, we'll go ahead and throw up who wins and what rows they did across. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Definitely spice it up on your own, but this should help to get you started. We're going to be doing this in HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and jQuery. So let's go ahead and get started. As always, go ahead and rename what you're doing here. So this will be YouTube Tic Tac Toe. What's going on here? Let's go ahead and save that. And then definitely import anything you're going to be using. As I said, we're going to be using Bootstrap, and we're also going to be using jQuery. Cool. So I'll be doing a much more complex version of this when I redo it in Angular. So that's why I'm kind of just going ahead and throwing it up right now. Alright, so let's get set by just go ahead and throwing out all our HTML code. That's typically what I like to do. So we're going to go ahead and create a div here called, and give it a class. And we'll set this equal to container. This is a Bootstrap class, and then just text-center. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, just a little bit of styling. Go ahead and throw a div here. And then we're going to go ahead and create an anchor tag. And this is going to be our turn X and turn O buttons. So we'll just go ahead and assign a class here. And this is going to just use the standard BTN and then the BTN-primary classes. And we're going to give it an ID here. This is going to be how we target this later on as our selector. So we're just going to call it turn X. And then put some text here. Turn X, close it. And then we'll go ahead and copy this over one more time. And do the same, except we're going to change this turn X to turn 0, or turn O, excuse me. Turn O. Now, because we want our tic-tac-toe rows to go, left to right, we're going to go ahead and add a div class row here. And we're going to add some columns. Let's go ahead and do this. If you're not familiar with the column and grid system for Bootstrap, the way it kind of goes is you have basically a set of 12, and you start breaking up your columns into that. So you can maybe have 4, 4, and 4, or 6 and 6, and you'll get the hang of it. In our example, I think I just used column mid 6, column mid 6. So I'll go ahead and import this, which now that I'm looking at it, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we could have cleaned this up quite a bit. This is one of those times you look back at your code after like 3 months, like, oh man, I got so much better since when I did this. Let's go ahead and close this div as well. And then within here, we're going to go ahead and add some anchor tags. We're going to give it a class equal to BTN, BTN-primary. And then we're going to add this custom class called Tic that we'll use later on. And then we're going to add the ID of 0. Remember, I use this ID here to kind of use it as a selector. And then the way I set it up so that we know it's default is I just have these hashtags. Now we're going to go ahead and copy this twice over. And this is going to be ID 1. And then ID 2. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and just copy this over twice, the col mid 6, these. And we're going to change our values. So we're going to have ID 3, 4, and 5, and then 6, 7, and 8. So why is our div missing? Oh, because we need these div class rows. That's right. So make sure you add, I forgot to copy the full amount. We're going to throw a div on here, and then we're going to go ahead and throw another div class row right here, like so, /div, and we should be solid. Why aren't we solid? It looks like I messed up. I have one too many here. 1, 2, 3 divs. Div class col mid, that's the container, that's the row. Then we have div, col mid, div, and then right here, I'm missing a div. There we go. So everything's kind of lined up neat and nice. Just to stick with consistency, we're going to go ahead and add a little bit of CSS right here. And we're going to do the body and then background dash color of black. Just because that's what I did then. That's basically all the CSS I do. Now, we're going to set up our jQuery. And then we're going to go ahead and do some of the easier functionality before we move on. So now that we have everything set up, it's not doing anything at this point, but it's just there. We need to go ahead and get our document ready. This is basically the start, basically saying when our JavaScript loads or when our page loads, go ahead and run this jQuery. Let's go ahead and do that. Now we're going to create a turn parameter here that we're going to use later, and this is going to default the player's turn to X. So let's go ahead and put some comments in here as we go along. So defaults turn, at least player's turn to X. Now we're going to create an array that's going to actually store the turns that are in there. Remember how we had this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? We're going to use that array to check some values to see if anything across, up and down, or left and right actually met a winning score for either player. So we're going to go ahead and add an array that stores the values that we will check later for a winner. So this is just going to be a, we're going to call this var turns. This is going to be equal to an array, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this over here with 9 hashtags in it. So we're going to initialize it with the same values that we start out with, because we want the array to basically be empty. We're also going to default the computer's turn, so we're just going to say default computer turn, and we're going to start this at computer's turn, and we're just going to set this equal to 0. So the player's going to start automatically with NX, and the computer's going to start with AO for their turn. And so we're going to also, the way I did this was I kind of just created a Boolean variable that would detect if it was the computer's turn or the player's turn. And after the player's turn, it would then change the Boolean variable to true, at which point the computer would take its turn and then it would change back to false. So this keeps track. This is going to be called var game on, and we're going to set it equal to false if it is the computer's turn. There's a lot of logic with this, and it's not the best logic in all honesty. I'm definitely going to clean this up when I do this in Angular, do it fresh. But at least we can put some comments in here and kind of know what's going on right now. So the first thing we want to do before we get into a lot of the more logical stuff is let's go ahead and change our turn value. So if we change our turn value, we want our turn X and turn Y to be we want our turn to be X and our player's turn to be Y. Let's go ahead and the way we actually want this to show up when we start. So let's go ahead and do that first. We're going to target this turn X. We'll just do a little change players. Actually, since it's turn X, let's go ahead and target and make it turn Y. Change players turn to X and computers to Y. Or, excuse me, O. So we're going to do that. We're just going to go ahead and set this like so. And we're going to say, look, when you click on turn X, remember, because it's ID, we use the hashtag. When you click on turn X, go ahead and click, pass a function that's going to do some stuff. Now, what do we want to do? We want to go ahead and reset the variable that we did before. We're going to set turn O. We're going to set turn to O. And we're going to set computer's turn to X. Now, from here, what we want to do is we actually want to denote this so that what we can kind of tell, we can remember which turn is which. And the way that I did it was I just took away the btn primary class, so it looked like you're switching values when you click. So we're going to target our turn X, and we're going to go ahead and remove the class. This is just a jQuery function that removes a class from the CSS. And we're just going to remove the class btn-primary. And then because we're going to be having two functions, one where it changes the player's turn to 0 and the computer's turn to X, and vice versa, one where it changes player's turn to X and computer's turn to 0, we're going to go ahead and add the turn O class right now, because one's always going to be on and one's always going to be off. So we're going to go ahead and target this right now as well, and then we'll test everything out. So we're going to say turn O dot add class btn dash primary. Alright, now let's go ahead and see that. You'll see right there it turned off, so that's working, and then we can assume these variables are working as well. Let's go ahead and add the same functionality to the clicking on and off here. For the most part, we can just copy this first little function here, paste it in here, and change this turn X to turn O. Say when you click turn O, set our turn back to turn X, and set the computer's turn back to turn O, and then go ahead and swap out the X's and O's here as well. Save that, and now you'll see we switch back and forth between whose turn it is. Now in the next video, we're going to do all the ridiculous logic. There's about 3 functions worth. Actually, before we do that, before we jump into the logic, we can actually just go ahead and start inputting our turn onto the buttons. That's a pretty straightforward thing to do. So remember how we added the Tic class? We're going to say, when you click on that Tic class, if you forgot, each one of our buttons here, we added this custom class called Tic. That's because we wanted to target it as our selector. And remember, classes start with a dot. And we're saying, look, when you click one of these classes, we're going to run a function that is then going to do some stuff. We're going to create something here called var slot. And this is going to basically be a variable that's going to store the value of the object that we're clicking. That's what the this is. When you click this, that's this. When you click this, that's this. That's what we're inheriting. We're going to take the attribute from that ID. Now this is why I named the IDs equal to a 0, 1, 2, 3, because they're going to match up with our index arrays. And then we're going to go ahead and pass it into, and for the time being, we'll comment this out, a player turn function that's going to take in our turn, which is going to be an X or an O, and it's going to go ahead and take in the slot, basically where we click. So this is going to be our X or O, and this is going to be the location. So before we do anything else, we can go ahead and do player turn. we'll go ahead and define player turn at this point so that we can see it working in action. So we're going to create a function called player turn. That's going to go ahead and take in a parameter that we call turn and ID. Remember what it's supposed to be and then where it's supposed to go. And we're going to create a variable here just called spot taken. Now this is going to be equal to basically the ID that we're going to be checking. So remember how we used ID, so it was #0, #1, #2, and we're just going to check to see if this is it. So it's going to be the hashtag, and then concatenate that with our ID that we're passing in, which is at 0 to 9, or 0 to 8, dot text. We're going to set that equal to get the text value, which is a hashtag. So what we're going to do next is just write a simple if statement. Now the reason we have an if statement, so we're going to say if spot taken is equals the hashtag. This is basically going to set up, we're going to go ahead and add this. We're going to go ahead and put this logic in here so that you can't click on a spot that's already taken. These are going to change when we click on it, but as of right now, we don't have any way of testing it, but that's what this logic is for. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is, remember our turns array here stored all our hashtags. We're going to go ahead and change that value because we know now that it's not taken. So we're going to let the player add the turn that they did. So we're going to say turns, and we're going to pass in the ID. Remember, the ID is the same as the location, so that's why this is going to work. We're going to set this equal to our turn. Now let's go ahead and try this. So it's not working, which means I forgot something. Oh, excuse me. So remember our turn, we now that we've gotten the text from it to check the spot taken, we actually have to go ahead and set the value in the button that we're clicking. And that's pretty straightforward. We just need to use our selector and again our hashtag. And then we're going to concatenate with our ID. And then we're going to say, look, the text, set the text in there to our turn. Here we're actually getting the text. And then here, we're actually setting the text. We're checking to make sure that it's a hashtag. And if it is, we're going to pass in that value into our array that later we will check to make sure that there's a winner at every step of the turn, at every turn, player or computer. And then here, we're actually going to set that value. Now, I'm a little bit dumbfounded as to why that didn't work right now. So, oh, I remember right here. So remember when we clicked, we counted this out. Let's go ahead and save this. And now, when we pass in our turn, when we click on a button and the location, it's going to go ahead and change. So see right now. And right now we don't have any logic to reset this, but you'll notice how we're not able to actually override the value that's in here. That's what that if statement is there for. So when we come back in the second video to close this out, we're going to go ahead and show how to reset all this. And then we're going to show the computer turn logic. And then finally, we're going to just set the winning conditions. I hope you guys found this first video helpful. I look forward to finishing this up in the second video. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And thank you to those of you supporting me on Patreon. I appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching the video. Special thanks to our sponsor, Dev Mountain. Definitely check them out at devmountain.com. If you're looking for a bootcamp that's in front-end development, iOS, or UX, go ahead and give them a shot. Tuition includes housing, so you can get up and go and fully immerse yourself in the program. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.